Hello, good evening and welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Nadim Majid. We're coming to you live from Stein Studios in Ratmalana. Our topic of discussion today is political accountability and the future of Sri Lanka's democracy. It's a funny thing, democracy. There's a saying that democracy will soon degenerate into an anarchy, such an anarchy that every man will do what is right in his own eyes and no man's right to liberty, property will be secure. Stick around till the end of the program and I'll let you know who said that. To discuss this very weighty topic, we're joined this evening by Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara, Devila Mount Lavinia Municipal Councillor from the UPFA, Dr. Atula Samarakon, lecturer at the Open University of Colombo, and Mr. Eranda Ginige, a civil activist and also author of Janarajaya, Citizen's Handbook for Sri Lanka. I'd like to start this evening off with Eranda actually. Eranda, my first question to you on the subject of republics. There's a very popular movie some time ago where it was said, Rome is the mob and the mob is Rome. Mm-hmm. Is the Sri Lankan Republic going the same way as the Roman Republic?
I haven't watched that movie. I must say that first.
The Gladiator.
Is it?
Yeah.
Right. That I have watched, yeah. Is the Sri Lankan Republic going down that path? But I think, you know, before I answer that question, the important thing is, do we really understand what is the Republic? You know, in Tamil, Kudiyarasu, in Sinhala, Janarajaya. In my numerous conversations with all kinds of people at all levels in the society, what I realize is that although we were made a republic back in 1972, in fact, you know, we should have celebrated the 47th anniversary of our republic, which did not happen. We didn't have much time to realize the republic in its full force, because we entered into a war that would become a 30-year-long civil war within the country. And then once that war ended, again we lost the opportunity, because we went on this uncontrolled economic development struggle without really thinking about who we are, what is the state of our republic, and how should we realize that republic in the 21st century. So one reason why I actually wrote the book, Janarajaya, which is available in Sinhala at the moment, is because to educate the people about what the republic actually means. The republic is when a state is owned by, or the sovereignty of the state is given to all the people of that particular state. So in 1972, the sovereignty of the state was given to all citizens of Sri Lanka, including Sinhala, Tamil, Muslim, Malay, Burgher, Chetty, Vadi, you know, all nationalities, ethnicities, whatever you name it. So we all have equal sovereignty, and we also have equal rights, and we also have equal franchise. So that's what really makes us a republic. But do we really understand that? That's a question. Do the political leaders, as I call them, people's representatives, because the topic today is about democracy. I don't like calling them, you know, Palakya, Deshapalakya, and so on. They are simply people's representatives. Do they really understand what is the republic and what is their role and responsibility in the republic? I don't think so. I think we in the 21st century, particularly the young generation who will be developing this state into the future, needs to understand what is the republic and how do we realize the republic in the 21st century.
But Eranda, just to contend that, I don't think it's a matter of what you say, the Deshapalakya or the politician failing to understand their role in the republic. I don't think there's a motivation for them to understand, because
whatever it is,
the fact that, as you questioned whether the people understand it, and one could be led to believe that the failure on the people's part of understanding that has allowed politicians to exploit it.
I agree with you. But at the same time, we do have people's representatives who don't even know the basics of the Constitution, which makes us a republic to begin with. And we do have members of parliament who don't even read the bills and the acts that they actually raise their hands either in favor of or not, right? So yes, I think you're correct. The people need to, and I think we can't blame the people, colleagues, because we haven't really educated the people in our school system, for example. We haven't taught them about the republic, what this really means. We learn little bits and pieces as a subject, but we really don't make a citizen when they leave the school at the age of 18 who is capable of actually making decisions in the republic.
Thank you, Aranda. On that note, I'll move to educator on the panel this evening, Dr. Athula Samarakoon, lecturer at the Open University of Colombo. Dr. Samarakoon, Aranda says that we are not educating our citizens, our citizenry. Do you think that that is true? Do you think that there is an absence of political education or education on civic responsibility for Sri Lankans?
Participate in this program today, and I think Aranda has a point when he says that we are not educating. We are educating, but on which areas we have to think of that, I think. So our education system, I think, lacks much when it comes to the education of politics or civics. The civic education is lacking much at the moment, and I have found recently in some scholarly presentations, when a system of education lacks a certain amount of teaching on social justice, so that society fails in two things. One, in treating its citizens in an equal manner, and on the other hand, the society will fail also to also not to discriminate its citizens. So this discrimination and equality are values which actually can be taught in an education which is aimed at social justice. So right now, I think our education mainly should focus on on teaching social justice. So look at those so-called professionals in this country, those so-called intellectuals in this country, the statements they make in public, especially in a context like today, in a context where extremist politics has surfaced much, and in a context where there is much sectarian violence. So we should be much careful in voicing our emotions, our feelings, but when we lack a certain understanding in social justice and non-discrimination and equal treatment towards other ethnicities, I think most of our educated people, most of those so-called educated and professionals have not realized the danger of what they preach, what they
Dr. Samarakoon, we are the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. It seems that you are suggesting that we are, at least in name, a socialist republic that has no understanding of social justice.
Yeah, really the Constitution says we are a democratic and a socialist country, but have we ever been able to internalize the real values of democracy and socialism? So that is where we have failed. In a way, there's a great debate on majoritarian politics of this country. Some argue that majoritarianism has been the problem, and some say that our constitution has not been able to recognize the rights of the minorities, whereas the first constitution of Sri Lanka had provided much for the protection of the minorities of this country. But later on, when we created the republic, the very idea of republic refers to that the people owns the country. The people should be able to feel that they belong to the country. So a republic is made by the people. So republic is made for the people. So they all should have a say in the system of governance. So that is where we need to rethink. We got several opportunities to rethink the idea of republic. If you look at the post-conflict scenario in 2009, and also in the context of this Easter Sunday attack. So these are real good opportunities which we can use to rethink the idea of the republic. I think behind
Thank
all
you,
these...
Dr. Samarkand, we'll come back to you in time. I'd like to quickly move to Mr. Kesalal Gunasekara, Dehulamant, Romania Municipal Councillor from the UPFA, also former SLFP Member of Parliament. Mr. Gunasekara, you've heard what Mr. Ginige had to say, his thoughts on the Republic, what Dr. Samarkand said about the absence of a social justice concept in our education system. When it comes to political accountability on the part of our politicians, you've been a politician for some time now, a public representative. Do you feel that I mean, it's almost a rhetorical question, but do you feel that there is political accountability in Sri Lanka?
It's at a very minimal level, I would say.
Is it at any level?
There is at certain occasions.
What are the steps that we can take now, moving forward, that we haven't taken so far, to increase this political accountability, to ensure that the people that are voted to represent are actually representing?
You need to bring in systems. Systems is the only way to ensure that you become accountable. If you don't have systems, nothing gets worked. If you have a system, you know whether somebody is bypassing the system. If you have a system, you know whether somebody is trying to influence the system. So it's the establishment of the system that is required. In our country, we don't have that, and we are not interested in establishing systems. If you take the case of a minister, he feels that what he says goes. I mean, what he decides has to be carried on. That's all, simple as that. That I have seen that for many years. So where is the accountability? I don't think there is any accountability. So the question is, we need to understand, we bring in systems, but you must understand, at this juncture, to bring in systems, you have to get them to do it. Members of Parliament to do it. Are they interested in doing it? Is the other question. So the civil society has to keep pressure, bring in pressure on Parliament to move and bring in systems of governance. That's the only way to ensure that you bring good governance into this administration.
Do you agree with the statement that most of the members of Parliament don't have or do not understand their role as members of Parliament, as people's representatives?
I would say yes.
So how can you pressure a group that doesn't understand what their role is
but the
to
question
do
is this, no.
what is demanded of their role?
But the question is this, people elect them, whether we like it or not. That's the process. So once they are elected, we have to somehow get them to do things. I have told this to the speaker as well. He needs to understand that unless he brings in expertise from outside, not to give them power, but to bring in expertise from outside to assist in governance. That's the only way we can see
How
changes.
do you mean expertise from outside?
Expert opinion. We lack that. Now, take the case of bringing a piece of legislation before Parliament. To me, bringing legislation, it involves so many things. Number one, as to whether so many groups have participated in a discussion pertaining to that. Has it gone through that process? Has it gone through a debate? The public, do they know, are they aware of it? So if you go through that process, you realize bringing in a piece of legislation will take at least 9 to 10 months. It's not that easy. So you must pre-plan things. You rush through and bring in laws, are not going to work. They're not going to work. So we have to be very frank, we need to start from scratch, get the systems in place, don't rush through. Now see, I'll give you a classic example with regard to supplementary budgetary proposals that have been taken up, picked up practically every month. You have a budget which was passed a couple of months back because it was delayed. And thereafter, you bring in supplementaries. What is the rationale behind this? I mean, either the speaker should put a firm foot down and say, look here, we passed a budget a couple of months back. I can understand if at least 6-7 months have elapsed for you to bring a supplementary. You are bringing supplementaries every month. It's all rubbish. That's not good governance.
But without the supplementary estimate, how are you going to buy the bulletproof car?
This is a problem.
Thank you very much.
We need to understand, if you don't have rules and regulations governing our own actions, the end result, I don't have to tell you what it is going to be.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kesulal Gunasekara. I'll open the floor now for questions from our two journalists joining us this evening. On my immediate left is Charlene Benedict, and on his left, Deshan Gonawala. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Nadeem. I'd like to direct my first question to Mr. Eranda Ginige. You were speaking about the young generation of Sri Lanka being aware of the concept of the republic. So this comes a lot. This brings around the subject of education into debate, and also Dr. Samarakon was speaking about non-discrimination and social justice. You know, students, children, being aware of this, but how can we actually pursue this? Can we pursue this realistically in an education system that from day one discriminates against your caste, your religion, your background, your family background, things that, you know, a person doesn't have control over? My question being, when it comes to the school system in Sri Lanka, it's a common secret that the school system in Sri Lanka discriminates against a child's social background, into a child's education, into a child's religion. How can we achieve this through such a degraded system?
Do you mean having schools separate for different religions?
Yes, exactly.
In fact, when you invited me, I sort of went on social media and asked my followers what questions would they like me to answer in this program, and this question was one of them. You know, why do we have schools based on religion when in fact we should strive to have non-discrimination and sort of unity and understanding amongst us. So yeah, I mean, the simple answer to your question is, I personally think in the Republic that we should not segregate students based on religion. We should have schools which are, and for that matter, not even segregated on gender. We should not have, you know, boys' schools and girls' schools. We should have schools which are open, free and open to all people. Having said that, I don't think that, I mean, I come from a boys' school, although up to my scholarship I studied at a mixed school, as we call it. But in my school, I don't particularly think that, you know, that schools necessarily teach you discrimination or make you discriminatory, right? Obviously, in a society where different identities live, there's got to be some level of issues, but I don't think there's a systemic discrimination problem in the education space or in many other sectors. But I think where we fail in the education system is with the segregation. I think we can solve that if the lawmakers really want to. But I think what really needs to happen as a first step, which we can easily do, is to educate the teachers first. If teachers are listening, the teachers should first of all understand what is a republic, what is the sovereignty, what is democracy, what is the democratic structure of the Sri Lankan republic, the state, and what is the responsibility of the citizen, and so on, and then give that knowledge and give that practical insight to their students, so that when they come out of the school at the age of 18, they become citizens, i.e. Individuals capable of making decisions for the republic. That's democracy, right? Now, although republic is not part of the word is not part of the topic today, democracy is part of the topic today, right? Now, as much as we fail to understand what is the republic, we also fail to understand what is democracy. I would like to ask this debate: what is the difference between Prajatantra Vadaya and Prajatantrika? Why are we called Prajatantrika Samajavadi Janarajya and not Prajatantravadi Samajavadi Janarajya? These words have meaning, right? Democracy, demos kratos, rule of the people, by the people, for the people. And the simple singular meaning of it is Janata Palane, Prajatantraya. And the ism of it is the Vade. And Mr. Kesari, we often, every time we talk about this, we talk of Prajatantra Vade, the ism of it, right? We are not talking about Prajatantraya, right? So, simple stuff like that, even the basics of democracy, we fail to understand. And we think, a lot of the people think that democracy is selecting. Now, I use this word very carefully. We think democracy is selecting our rulers. That's what they think. Whereas democracy is actually a decision-making process. If the citizens are the ones to make decisions in the republic, then there's got to be a process to make those decisions. And that process that we have selected is democracy. And how it works, we can figure it out, and we can debate, and we can argue, and we can improve on it. But we have first and foremost understand, when we say we vote, or our franchise, or our suffrage, what that really means is not selecting our ruler. It is that we are making decisions for the republic.
Mr. Gunasekara, I wanted to ask you now in relation to what was said earlier. Do you see that some of these decisions that are made, some of these decisions to amend these structural anomalies, so to speak, are practical? Because you've seen over the last few years, even over the last few weeks, you've had laws, even today, that were discussed in the media, that were supposed to have been submitted for cabinet approval and then parliamentary approval, and then withdrawn because certain parties oppose it. You saw circulars being issued, and then circulars being rescinded as well. Do you think in such an environment, to have these amendments or have these structural changes be done, is a practical expectation that we can have, given the extremely sensitive situation or the sensitive basis upon which our governments are at the moment?
Well, whether we like it or not, we need it.
Do you see it happening?
Pardon?
Do you see it happening?
No, I don't see it happening. To be very frank, if I may say so, I feel that decisions taken at the cabinet also, somebody has to understand that those are not correct decisions sometimes. Why is that happening? Because it's not going through a good process. That is where we are making a fundamental mistake. In order to get a paper to cabinet, it has to go through a process. It's not a question of where the minister decides to today and informs the secretary of the ministry, get this cabinet paper through. No, that's wrong. So it's very difficult. I for one believe that we need to have a system where we have to come from the lowest level. To me, starting from the local authority level is the only answer to bring good people into parliament. Of course, I don't believe in the provincial council system in this country. I feel the two levels are more than enough. The local authority level and parliament. Get people to move in the local authority level and then move up to parliament. Then they are a little bit experienced. Today what we see is people coming direct to parliament. They have absolutely no clue as to what governance is all about. You come to parliament and you realize you don't know what governance is all about. And for you to learn, it takes about 1 or 2 years. Half your time is gone. So you need to learn before you come to parliament. And governance is not that easy. Yeah? You can do a good job when you're in the opposition. No sooner you come into government, you are in trouble. Why? Because you don't understand it. In opposition, you can rake up so many things. You can say anything you want. But when you come to government, it's totally different. It's a different ball game. So unless you know it, it's very difficult. And that is exactly what has happened to several governments during the last 15 to 20 years. I have seen that because when I study certain ministers failing, I realize they are failing for the simple reason, not because they are not that they don't have knowledge, they don't have experience in governance.
Dr. Samrakon, this topic of having educated people come in and take these positions has been something that has been spoken for the last so many decades. I think Mr. Gunasekara can agree that back when he was starting out as an amateur politician, this was part of the discourse.
Yeah.
It's continuing to be part of the discourse, and I don't see it changing for the next few years. Do you think, as an academic, that A, the current system accommodates people like you to potentially contribute to governance, and B, are there hindrances, and if so, what are they?
Well, actually, as an academic, my role mainly has been to teach and do research. But on the other hand, we often make our opinions, we disseminate knowledge to the public, and we come in public forums like this, and we also play a role in this system. So we contribute somehow in propagating ideas, in debating ideologies. So the problem is whether the rulers, the systems, the institutions take our ideas, opinions seriously. So that is the question actually. So
do they take it seriously?
I don't think that there are many educated people, intellectuals of this country, and they have been voicing their ideas, valuable ideas in many public forums, in weekend newspapers, if politicians are really interested in reading them. So, but the problem is when we look at the process of policy making and the policies that have been made so far, we really don't see that these valuable ideas have been incorporated into any of these policies. Now, if you look at any of the agreements that the government would make with any foreign country, or any of the local policies, maybe the education policy or health policy. So in none of these policies we see a sort of one-dimensional way of looking at the society, deciding in a way the powerful people want it, the rulers wanted it, not the way those opinion makers, those intellectuals, the average masses have wanted it to happen. So this is unfortunate, really. So the idea of democracy actually is very much enshrined as a system where everybody should be able to have a say in that. Everybody has a role in that. So it is not that the people vote and then come back and watch what the politicians do during the period of their rule. So that is the way we have been practicing politics in this country. So therefore, I would suggest that we need to actually debate the idea of democracy right now. So the democracy is written into the constitution, but we never know whether the constitution is really practiced or not. So because there is no rule of law, first of all. As Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara rightly points out, the law has been the words of the ministers sometimes, words of the powerful people sometimes.
Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara, you were speaking about there not being a proper process in Sri Lanka, and you were speaking that Parliament needs to bring in expertise from outside when formulating legislation and performing their other tasks. But I beg to differ with you on that fact, because we do have a process of getting in expertise from outside, people who are experts in the field, and that's through the national list in Parliament. But we see that this process is being misused. So is the real problem the lack of processes or the misuse of processes?
No, the lack. What you say is you can get a few members who are experts into parliament. But the issue is not that. The issue is have good processes, you know. There is one thing that I must tell you. Many people think that if you have experts in parliament, things will be better. No, 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 no. Don't ever run away with that idea. Governance is a totally different subject altogether. You must learn governance. In governance, what you need is a little bit of education. When I say little bit, or not 8th standard, little bit of education, common sense, value of ethics embedded into your system. If you have all those three, you can be a good administrator. You can once you learn things, you are top of the world. But unfortunately, we don't have such people. That's our problem.
But do you believe it's the lack of expertise in the field? Because many of these politicians...
They are the people who come and tell you what are the things to be incorporated. We say with regard to a particular bill that you want to introduce. There will be many groups coming and tell you, look here, include this, include that. Then you sit and decide what you're going to do. So it's a consultative process. Now, those days when we were in parliament, committees were known as consultative committees. I will tell you a good example. If you just give me 1 minute. When the Human Rights Bill came before Parliament, we objected to the Speaker saying that it did not go through the consultative process. We objected. Then the Speaker asked the Leader of the House, he said correct. He looked back and we said no, it didn't. So he said no, it has not gone through. He said put it down, send it back to the consultative process. Why? You need that. Now, when it comes to the consultative committee, they are supposed to get experts' opinions into that and then only go ahead and table it in Parliament. We don't do that. We don't do it anymore.
Aranda, you hear about these committees in Parliament. How many members of Parliament do you feel understand what the roles of these committees are and what powers these committees actually have?
Not many of them. Not many. I mean, we don't have to deny this, right? I mean, look at the current parliament and a lot of the MPs who have been there for a very long time. I find it rather hilarious that some of these MPs who have been ministers in their lives, that they actually celebrate their 20th anniversary in politics or 30th anniversary in parliament at a stretch. I mean, you know, it's not something to be proud of, especially when the republic at a state like this, you know. See, I think it's a no-brainer by now that, you know, either they lost the plot altogether, or at least some of the more intelligent and educated people who have been there have forgotten the purpose why they are there. Now let me clarify this very simply, because I don't think a lot of the viewers also understand what is this process, because Mr. Kesari continuously mentioned this word governance. Now I hear in media and sometimes even journalists use this word government and state synonymously, right? Like Raja and Anduwa. So, you know, some people say Raja තමයි මේකට වග කියන්න ඕන. State එක තමයි මේකට වග කියන්න ඕන. Some people say, but you know, what are these words? The state is the republic, which includes all of us. Anduwa or government is actually the government side of the parliament. We have 225 MPs, 196 of them are directly elected by the people. 29 are elected or selected, appointed by what is called the national list. I think this word national is something that we have to debate if we have time, whether we are a nation state or not, and how this identity thing connects to it. So we have 225 MPs who are representing people, and for every MP there's roughly about 80,000 people. That's how the structure is made. The role of the legislature, the reason why we call it the legislature or the parliament, is simply that they should act as one body. It's a unicameral body. It's not a bicameral parliament. All of their job, once they are elected to the parliament, is simply to understand the problems of the people of the republic and bring those problems to the parliament and propose solutions, debate, and then take that information back to the people, ask their opinion, and then come and vote according to the people's choice. That is representative democracy essentially.
That is the utopian representative.
It
On
is
that
not
note,
the utopian. No.
on that note, Eranda, we need to go in
Sure.
for a short break. When we come back, I mean, you might need a separate Pantipaha program to communicate that to the public. On that note, we go in for a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll look at the different accountability mechanisms that are available. How can you hold your public representative accountable to you? Welcome back to Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is political accountability and the future of Sri Lanka's democracy. I'd like to start off this next round with Mr. Kesarao Gunasekara, Devila Matravina Municipal Councillor from the UPFA and also former Member of Parliament from the SLFP. Mr. Gunasekara, in February this year, in late February this year, a group of 5 MPs from across party lines unilaterally made their asset declarations public. They were followed a week later by 2 others. So of the 225 members of Parliament, so far only 7 have thought it necessary to make this information publicly available. Meanwhile, the Presidential Secretariat has refused an order by the RTI Commission to release the Prime Minister's asset declaration. How important are these asset declarations? Members of local government bodies are also required to submit this. Do you think that that information needs to be public, and how important is that information being public and subject to public scrutiny? How important is it for political accountability?
Well, it's very essential. Only thing is, I'm wondering as to why now there were 5 or 6 members. In fact, I asked this question from the Speaker as to why that is not in the parliamentary website. Their asset declarations should not be in somebody else's website. It has to be in parliamentary website because that's their declaration. That's the only way to get the others also to stand in line, because you have to understand still Parliament does not go through this process where their declarations must be posted on the website. They have to go through that process and take that decision. Whether it is the Prime Minister or the President, everybody's asset declaration must be there for people to see. Then people will know, look here, these are the assets this man had when he came to Parliament. And look at the assets that he has now.
But why
Very simple.
Why has that not taken off? I mean, it wasn't a partisan issue. They had the first 5 MPs were Honourable Vasudeva Nanayakkara, Vidura Wickramanayake, State Minister Iran Wickramaratne, Tharaka Balasuriya, Mr. Sumandiran, and then there was later on Ali Zahid Maulana from the SLMC and Ranjan Ramanayake as well. So those 7 have made it public.
Yeah, my question to them
the
is,
Presidential Secretariat is actively fighting RTI Commission order.
no, my question is as to why those members, hats off to them, but why didn't they make that appeal to the Speaker and say, look here, we want our asset declarations on the parliamentary website because we are members of Parliament.
What about members of
another
local government? Do you think that the Devila Mountravina Municipal Council should have the asset declarations of
If anybody wants, yes. No two words about that. If you come in to occupy a seat where you are being elected by people, you got to show them what your assets are.
Will you give an undertaking to do that in the Devila Mountravina?
I have already
to bring together the council members and
our
to post
declaration
it
is
on the
always
website?
available. I was in Parliament, the declarations are there.
Okay.
Very simple.
No, I mean, as a municipal council member, will you encourage the other members?
Of course.
I think 36 members of the municipal council.
We need to ensure that these people make their declarations and let it be posted on the website. That's okay.
What are the other accountability mechanisms that we can introduce for public representatives?
As I said, you bring in systems and automatically accountability sets in. If you don't bring in systems, you're not accountable. It's very simple. You need to understand, we are failing because we don't have systems. Now in any other country, you have systems. Even the president of the USA cannot do what he wants. He has to go to follow a system. But in this country, no, there are no systems. The minister decides what he wants to do. Well, who's going to oppose him? We don't have a proper civil society. Of course, to some degree, there is a civil society that is kicking up now. But still, for all, I don't think it's a proper civil society. Now, I sometimes tune into the parliamentary debates which is available on the YouTube. Look at the comments that have been posted on that. My God, the language that is being used. Are these the people who are citizens of this country?
Dr. Samrakon, of all the political parties represented in Parliament, the names that I just mentioned, they cover MPs from all of the political parties represented in Parliament with one notable exception, the JVP. Why have none of the members of Parliament of the JVP seen fit to take this step? Make their asset declarations public. If they believe that transparency and accountability are important in our democracy, in our republic, I think 6 members of Parliament in the JVP and no one has seen fit to take this step.
Yeah, I think they should be able to do that, because that's not a big issue, because they have declared their assets already, and I think those reports are available, and they should take actions to make them public. So,
do you think that there is that among the members of Parliament, at least when it comes to ensuring or making themselves more accountable to the people, that partisan lines begin to blur and they will always back each other up?
yeah.
That's
So
when
that
it
is
becomes-
where I think their unity is, I think, because though they belong to various political parties, SLF, UNP, JP, so they have some unity somewhere. So that unity and understanding is very much visible when it comes to, talk about themselves. None of these parties have been able to make sort of self-criticisms about their real practice, actually. So they talk about the others, but when it comes to their internal party democracy, none of them actually can be.
But Dr. Samrakon, at the end of the day, that is, again, it comes back to that root of the problem. I mean, we have a parliament. We are expecting democratic governance from a parliament that is comprised of inherently undemocratic political parties. It's a bit of oxymoron.
I think that's a very
it's a paradox. How can we expect democratic governance from undemocratic parties?
I agree. Actually, this inherently undemocratic party. So that's a very good fitting phrase to describe the politics of the political parties of Sri Lanka. So that is where I think we need to seriously rethink again whether we really have democracy or not in this country. So what we have really meant by democracy, whether democracy is a sort of supporting a political party in a blind way, so whether you follow a sort of ideology in a blind manner, so whether is that the democracy that we need to have? I don't really think people of this country really feel that they really are in a democracy, or they really want democracy. So everywhere what I see is people are highly politicized in a way that they only can support their politicians, their party. So when it comes to the idea of republic, people don't think that the country is not at all represented by their leaders. What the leaders represent is a certain set of interest, which is actually a very partisan and really biased towards a certain group of people, right? So that is where we need to rethink of the entire system of this country. As Mr. Kesarlal rightly points out, we don't have systems, right? We don't have institutions, but we have in the Constitution. The Constitution clearly defines the legislature, executive, judiciary, all these institutions have been clearly defined. But when it comes to the real practice, the real existence of these, any of these institutions actually do not really represent the people, or really refers to what is written in the Constitution.
Thank you, Dr. Samrakon. On that note, move to Mr. Eranda Ginige. Eranda, you was talking at the end of the previous round, you were mentioning about how maybe there is a lack of understanding of the concept of state and government among the general public in Sri Lanka. In that context, and in light of what you just heard from Mr. Gunasekara and Dr. Samarakon on the lack of accountability mechanisms to ensure that, what really can the people of Sri Lanka do? I mean, the political parties are undemocratic, the parliament is full of members of these political parties who are undemocratic. How do you achieve democratic governance, let alone good governance? How do you achieve democratic governance in Sri Lanka?
So, I'm a social innovator, social entrepreneur. As you know, that's something that I've given to the Republic, Samaj Vyavasayakatva. And in our work, when we face a problem, and if we can't find a solution, what we do is we sort of take a few steps back, right, and go to the basics, right? And as an educator myself, I think the underpinning problem for all of this is education, right? I don't think the Republicans, we are all Republicans, right? We are citizens of the Republic. We really don't understand the nature of our state and the nature of democracy and how it is structured in the Republic. So the first thing what we have to do, this is the solution, right? The solution is we have to educate people. I believe that any revolution, any change comes through education, right? So we need to give the right education, and that's why I took this step of writing the book and sort of disseminating that knowledge. But then you mentioned another word, that it is that utopian dream. Actually, I disagree with that. I don't think it is a utopian state, right? I think it is a very practical thing to do if the people understand, and if the people's representative understand what is their job. Because if MPs understand what they're supposed to do is simply legislation and not anything else, not talk about their private problems and school issues and all that jazz, a lot of issues can be solved. But there is a problem, Mr. Gunasekara. The problem is part of the legislature also becomes part of the executive, which is the cabinet of ministers, right? Now that is an anomaly. That is an abomination of what I think the word that you have been talking about, processes and systems, what was missing is checks and balances. So when you have the legislature which makes laws, but they can't execute laws, therefore you have the executive. Executive executes laws. That's the word of the executive. An executive is not only the president, it is the president, is the cabinet of ministers, and also don't forget, it is the state public service, which is part of the executive. They're the permanent executive. I don't know how many public servants, state officers know that you are part of the executive. You execute the decisions that are taken by the legislature. That's how the separation is done. But the anomaly, the abomination, the mutilation is that part of the legislature also becomes part of the executive, which is the cabinet. Now these are the real constitutional changes that we should do. But anyway, having said that, I would like to sort of take this topic to another very important area that some people on social media brought up in the current context of this identity crisis that we are facing. Because I believe that even the Easter Sunday attack, and if you go to the root causes of it, what you see is the identity, whether it is national identity, ethnic identity, or religious identity. There's an identity problem. Now I would like to sort of pose this question to my fellow panelists and to you guys and to the viewers, is that now we were made a republic in 1972, and then we started talking about something called a nation state, which is the Sri Lankan nation state, right? The name was changed to Sri Lanka. Then all of a sudden, we were asked to become a Sri Lankan nation state. A nation state is a relatively new concept in the world. It actually emerged in the 90s in the West, which is now shoved down on in the rest of the world. And artificially we are trying to create the Sri Lankan national identity, which does not exist. Whereas in this republic we do have people who speak Sinhala language, who dress Sinhala dresses, who cook Sinhala meals, and who cook, who have Sinhala festivities, Sinhala culture, and then you have Tamil people who speak Tamil language, and they have Tamil food, Tamil festivities, Tamil dresses, and there's Muslim, which people who are hugely influenced and their culture is hugely shaped by their religion, Islam, and they have their unique identity, and so are other national identities. But where on earth is the Sri Lankan national identity? Is there such thing at least? Aren't we trying to create this artificial national identity which creates so much ambiguity, so much uncertainty, and so much distrust between the Sinhala Tamil Muslim people?
On that note, we're going for the questions, Shalin and Deshan. Since Shalin went first last time, should we go with Deshan?
Please.
Mr. Gunasekara, I want to pose this question to you, and it's regarding something Mr. Ginige said, and I want to get a different perspective, since you did advocate that we should have a challenge on this matter. Mr. Gunasekara, you've been in the political arena for a long time. You've had an opportunity of working at local government level, at national level, and now again at local government level. Do you not think that the Sri Lankan identity in itself stems from the diversity that is prevalent?
Stems from the
Diversity
diversity.
that is prevalent, that we have, as opposed to trying to create a unified Sri Lankan identity necessarily.
Well, the question is, as far as I'm concerned now, if you take the the major ethnic components of this country, to a larger degree it is associated with religion as well. In my mind, religion is private. If no sooner it comes into contact with governance, you are in trouble. I have observed that, I have seen that many occasions. Now the Sri Lankan identity is something that we must always use in all our activities. It's a Sri Lankan identity. If we do that, then in that case we'll succeed in so many areas. But unfortunately, we are not being permitted to use the Sri Lankan identity. Why? Because you try to bring in the religious input into the whole exercise. So the Sri Lankan identity, if it can be maintained, is ideal, and if we can do that, we can move forward in a much more smoother manner.
Mr. Irandagini, since you brought the topic of national identity into the debate, speaking about national identity, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, we all follow one culture, we all wear the same clothes, we all have the same beliefs. But do you think that the more pertinent issue that should be discussed is the fact that people really don't know each other? For example, you take the people in the north. They were a group of people who suffered mostly during the past 30 years or so. They really don't know what happens in the rest of the country. People in the south don't really know what happens in the rest of the country. People in the east are also segregated to a certain degree. I think this transcends religion, culture, and ethnicity and all that. It's also a regional issue where people are confined to their little shell. They live in their own separate wells, like frogs in a well, and they live in fear of the unknown. Isn't the fear of the unknown that these people live with, motivating them and pursuing them to try and fight for what they think is right, when in fact they don't even know what the other party is thinking of?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I agree with you. That's part of the problem. Then again, I don't think we can ever because people are free to live wherever they want by constitution.
Exactly.
People are free to go wherever they want, right? And people have the utmost freedom to celebrate their culture and have any faith or religion as they wish. So people of the Republic has full freedom for that. So in that context, I don't think the government can actually artificially try to create this, Sanghindiava or whatever you want to call it, right? Mix people up and move people from north to south and south to north and this and that and all. I think it needs to be a natural process. But again, what I'm trying to say here is that, now I'll give you an example. Now, we use these words called Mahajatiya and Sulu Jatiya, right? So like majority and minority. Now let me ask another question from the panel and the viewers. Now if the Republic gives sovereignty, rights and franchise equally to all citizens, whether you're a Sinhala, Muslim, Tamil or Burgher, whatever, can there be a majority and a minority? The majority and the minorities are simply and purely a numerical number. It is just a statistic. It does not have any political meaning, because the argument is that, oh, because there's more Sinhala people, they will collude, they will get together and they will pass laws which are favorable for them. But then that violates the very foundation of the Republic. That can never happen. If one group of people try to have more privileges or try to have less privileges for somebody else, then it has to normalize across the board and more privileges to all people or less privileges to all people. So this is the thing. So there are some fundamental understandings that needs to happen, and we need to stop using some words in the society which leads to this misunderstanding. Because I'm particularly saying this because this is probably the time that we need to sort of talk about this issue in light of the current situation. But I tend to sort of once again challenge Mr. Gunasekar on this, because you said that we should use Sri Lankan identity. But then I ask you again, imagine that I genuinely want to live Sri Lankan identity, right? If there is such. But show me, what is that identity? Is there a Sri Lankan language? Is there a Sri Lankan history? Is there a Sri Lankan food? Is there a Sri Lankan dress? Are there Sri Lankan festivities? Are there Sri Lankan ways of life? No. All we see is Sinhala ways of doing things, Tamil ways of doing things, Muslim ways of doing things. That's diverse, and that's okay. Why do we have to create, to bring all these things together and create some artificial thing based on the name that we adopted in 1972? What if we decide to change the name of this state in another 20 years' time to, I don't know, La La Land? And are we going to call our nationality La La Nation? It's ridiculous. I think this whole Sri Lankan nation-state experiment is a failure. It is what's driving this fear, what you mentioned. We should let people celebrate their own cultures and also let other people celebrate their cultures and have that tolerance and have that maturity to let that happen. This whole shoving of the Sri Lankan thing, because the Tamil person then starts to wonder, hold on for a second, what is the Sri Lankan culture? How much of that is actually Sinhala? Where is Tamil fitting in? And then the Muslim person, what is...
To interrupt you there for just 1 second. Dr. Samrakun, I'd like to take your perspective on this. Since you are involved in the education sector, you are a lecturer at a university. Do you believe that, how far do you believe that educating children especially at a very young age regarding understanding about different cultures, because generally in the school system you study just your culture, and also, as we mentioned before, the school system is quite segregated depending on your social and cultural background. Introducing a certain subject, this was also brought into the discourse during the past few weeks in the political arena, to introduce a subject that teaches the children about cultures, religions and practices, customs of all Sri Lankan people. Do you believe that this would help reduce the ambiguity that surrounds the variety of people, the people from different castes, religions, creeds living here in Sri Lanka?
Well, Sri Lanka has a very strong and sound education system which is given free to all the people of this country. But unfortunately, we have not been able to make use of this system for the purpose of nation building. So that is where we have failed. So what we have taught throughout the history has really contributed to realize the differences among many ethnic groups, many religions, many languages, but not to make people aware of the common grounds that we really can share. So we have a lot of common grounds if you look at all three communities, all three major communities of this country, because we all belong to this subcontinent called South Asia. So if you trace our roots back, we all find our roots in ancient history. We have migrated from India or some parts of India. So with the Muslims or Sinhalese or Tamils. So I think our roots are common, very much common. Today morning I was watching a television program in a education channel. So there was a lesson for grade 6 students on history. So I was thinking to myself, so this is the way we really teach history. So we do not teach history, but we teach some values of of one particular race, one particular ethnic group on. So we from the childhood itself, we teach our students to appreciate only their language, only their religion. Only our kings are great. Others have always been villains. So that is how we have taught the history. So there is a serious problem when it comes to teaching history actually.
Mr.
So
Kesara, you was
just I'll just quickly pose this question,
sure.
Dr. Samarkund. I specifically want to ask you this because I know that you are partial to Marxist ideology. Do you think that the problem is that we highlight our collective identity more than individual identity?
So one thing is we have a problem in this country. So this ethnic conflict has been a reality. So we have been living with this conflict so long. Now, right now we have another conflict emerging with this Easter Sunday attack. So we have found another enemy. So how we as Sinhalese, as the major ethnic group of this country, have always tried to find some enemy or some other identity which we think as the opposing identity. When we were having this LTT problem, the ethnic conflict, terrorism. So the entire debate focused on the Tamils identity, whether they can, why they can't reconcile with the Sri Lankan, the larger mainstream identity. Now we talk about the Muslims identity. Now there is a lot of debates on social media, etc. We need to have a common identity, we need to have a common law, etc. So right now we artificially try to create this Sri Lankanness, but that should have started somewhere in the history. Our education policy makers should have focused on that issue some long time ago. But you cannot do that at this time when we have a huge issue in this country. So right now what we are doing is to discriminate the Muslims. When you talk about one
Dr.
law,
Samarkund, just very quickly to Mr. Gunasekara, and then I'll let Shalan get his one question in, and then we need to go for a break. Mr. Gunasekara, do you think that collectivist thinking or collective identity over individual identity is detrimental to democracy?
No, I don't think so.
Do you think it's
collective identity is ideal? We need to understand, if you try to fragmentize and you run into problems, you run into issues. So the collective identity is much more important than anything else.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunasekara. Shalan, very quickly.
Mr. Gunasekara also responding to a little bit on that. Collective identity cannot be developed overnight, can it?
It cannot be developed overnight, but for a long period of time, I don't know whether you are aware, from somewhere down the 80s, when applications were submitted and said nationality, everybody started writing Sri Lankan. They changed from Sinhala, Tamil, Muslim to Sri Lankan. That's how it started in the 80s, I think.
Mr. Gunasekara, getting back to the question that I was about to ask you, again, it's regarding the education system here in Sri Lanka. Now, we have a Minister of Education, we have a cabinet that discusses these kind of issues, and they've come up with certain proposals. One of the mainstream proposals that came up during the past was to award tablet computers to students. Do you believe that the Ministry of Education, or the minister, or the collective cabinet in this case, have got their priorities mixed up?
Well, the question is you're asking me an issue where decision has been already taken by the cabinet as to why they did that. As from who advised them to do that is something that you have to go into. As to whether that is an urgent requirement, I don't think so. In fact, there were so many people who said that is not warranted at this juncture. We need to understand that in our education system there is something that lacks. We do not know the religion of the Hindus. We do not know the religion of Islam. To some degree, everybody needs to learn that, so that we have some understanding. Now, when the school that I went to, for me, Tamil Muslim is more or less the same. We are not different. We have friends. I don't want to mention names, how we call them. But that was a brotherly, affectionate name. That's how we address those people. That is essential, because we need to understand that we all ethnicities have to live in harmony. That's the only way we can go through. Huh?
That's the only way that we can develop as a nation.
Yeah, that's the only way we can move forward. There is no other way. If we start fighting, that's the end of the country. So in order to establish that, it's very, very difficult, because on the one hand you have, as he said, a majority community, and the others are referred to as minority communities. You have 3 communities or 4 communities. How do you move forward? Get together. That's the only way. Have common, everything must be common. Even the law, I should say, must be common to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Gunasekara. On that note, we're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round. Welcome back to Face the Nation. We've been discussing some very weighty topics tonight, coming into the final round now, surrounding political accountability and the future of Sri Lanka's democracy. We've spoken about democracy itself in this country, the nature of our state and our government, the republic. We've spoken about identity, about collective identity and individual identity, about the different ethno-religious identities in Sri Lanka, and how we are going to move forward as a country. I'd like to start this final round with Dr. Atula Samarakoon, lecturer at the Open University of Colombo. Dr. Samarakoon, moving forward, how do you think we can ensure political accountability and secure democracy in Sri Lanka for future generations? Because right now it's in a very precarious place.
Yeah, sure. I think however much we talk about other issues like identity, minority, majority divisions, etc. So the central problem is political power. So in the political system, power is essential and power is central. So who holds power in this country? Which groups are prominent in that case? So these are the central issues that we need to debate. So for long, the one ethnic group of this country have been fighting for their place. They are asking for justice. But this majority political group, whether that majority political group has taken that issue seriously is a question. Until now, we have not been able to discuss meaningfully the issue of political power in this country. I am not talking about dividing power into the peripheral regions, but I am very much concerned about the power at the center. So at the center, we have there is a system where many political parties contribute, but when it comes to the decision making, only few individuals matter. Only in every party, the decision making power lies with few people, few groups. So this has been a serious issue. So that is where I think many of the people of this country don't feel that they belong to this state. Many of the people think that they are like outsiders. They have not been treated properly. They are discriminated. So all these questions are very much attached to the issue of political power, how power is constituted. So today power remains a very much a corrupt thing. So it is a valueless thing. There is no ethics in that. How power is handled is very much unethical. So these are the questions that we, as political scientists, that we can focus on. But I think when it comes to the real practice of politics, we need to think of ways how to change shape of this power, how to change the nature the power is constituted of this country. I think ultimately the people are powerful. People have the sovereignty. So if people people only can change the power of this country. So, but for that we need to educate the people. So for that we need real, true educationists as well.
And that leads me into my next question to Mr. Eranda, my final question rather to Mr. Eranda Ginige. You spoke of the need to educate the public. You authored a book, a citizen's handbook titled Janarajya, to educate the public on the role of the state, the concept of state and government, and also their role as citizens. Going beyond educating people on their role as citizens, how do we bring change? How do we turn this? It's not going to happen with the political establishment, so how do we turn the citizens of Sri Lanka into change makers?
I think a huge change is going to happen starting from 2020, this next decade, because we lost an entire generation of leaders in the 88, 89 JVP and UNP government killing of youth at that time, who should have been the leaders of today's society. That's why we have these very old people still hanging around, right? So we lost an entire generation, the 70s children. Now my generation, which was born around the 80s and after until about year 2000, they are getting into their 40s only starting from 2020. So you will now see a demographic change happening in the next decade. Wait and see. The entire demography and the decision making and the aspirations of the Sri Lankan Republicans is going to have a huge change by 2025. We will see that change. So I'm very, very hopeful that that change is going to happen, and my generation will make that change happen. Now, you guys did a bit of a straw manning fallacy by sort of using this word collectivism and collective decision making. You can still be a diverse country with different national identities and be collective, right? So it's not either. Now, the problem that the good professor was talking about, just to say a word on is what we have. The problem is we have partycracy. We have oligarchy, right? It's a party that runs the government, right? It's therefore the people's aspirations, the people's ability to make decisions is not upheld. The last thing I want to say is that I think you also mentioned this, that yes, we are diverse, we are different, but we must have one law. So we need to change this Sharia law and Tesavalame law and Udarada law and bring one law to applicable to all. And the last thing is, where I disagree with the professor is that you can't curb one group's rights and privileges and make another group strong. That's not how it should be done. What you should do is you should bring everybody to a state where they all have the same privileges, because the problems that are faced by one group of national identity or religious group or ethnic or whatever group that you call, those same problems are faced by others as well, right? So I think your camp needs to sort of move away from sort of blaming one national identity over the other, which is identity politics, but to have a genuine conversation, you need to engage all identities and have that decision. And my last comment is, let the Republic thrive. Thank you.
And finally, we come to Mr. Kesarlal Gunasekara. Eranda is hopeful for the future. He thinks that there's going to be a paradigm shift come 2025, because his generation is now taking over, or our generation, I should say, is now taking over the reins.
It's very good.
Mr. Gunasekara, I'm not insinuating anything here, but as your generation departs, have you all left any reins? Have you all do we have any reins to take over, or has the horse already bolted?
If I may start off and say, we have not. We have been unsuccessful. I think what we are going to hand over to the future generation is an hopeless country. But still, for all, there are so many things that can be done. In my last may I say something with regard to the governance that is going on in this country? Now, if you look at the ministries and the departments that are vocal in this country, they are all based in Colombo. They're all based in Colombo. 90% of them are based in Colombo. I still feel we have missed this completely. We must take these ministries out to the periphery. You must move them to the provinces. Get the departments to those provinces. Just imagine somebody in the north, somebody in the east, somebody in the south wanted to do something. He has to communicate with somebody in Colombo. He has to come to Colombo. Hatred. It's so very simple. If you move the ministries and departments to those respective
What you're saying
provinces,
is that the public services need to be more accessible.
yeah, because if you decentralize, those areas will see a lot of development because ministries will be going there. Those people will start getting employment as well in the rush, which is not happening in the present day context. So somebody has to see the bigger picture, the larger picture, and take correct decision. And I feel the election to parliament has to change. The system needs to be changed. You have to start from lower down, move your way up, and then see whether you can get into parliament. And number 3, the most important thing, ensure that whatever ethnicity that you have, gazette it every 5 years. Have the jobs according to those percentages so that everybody is happy. We have a problem, no? Most of the people are not happy. Why? Because they don't see justice. That's our problem. Justice is missing in the administration system. So we need to bring in, just my last point, take the case of the cabinet, the cabinet that sits every week and decides the future destinies of this country. They go through 50 to 60 papers and they finish off within 2 to 3 hours. How the hell can they do that? Do they understand that they cannot do things of that nature? It's not that easy. So it's very clear that the system of governance, which is called the cabinet system of governance, has failed. We need to make changes to that as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kesalal Gunasekara, former Member of Parliament from the SLFP and current Dehulla Mount Lavinia Municipal Councillor of the UPFA. Thank you very much also to Dr. Atula Samarakon for being here today and sharing your insights with us as well, lecturer at the Open University of Sri Lanka. And also thank you very much to Mr. Eranda Ginige, civil activist and author of the Citizen's Handbook to the Republic, Jana Rajaya. I opened this show with a quote. I beg your pardon. Thank you very much, Shalan and Deshan. I almost forgot you, but you got there in the end. I opened tonight's show with a quote, and I told you if you stuck around till the end, I would tell you who said it. Let me complete that quote. Democracy will soon degenerate into an anarchy, such an anarchy that every man will do what is right in his own eyes, and no man's life or property or reputation or liberty will be secure. And every one of these will soon mold itself into a system of subordination of all the moral virtues and intellectual abilities, all the powers of wealth, beauty, wit and science, to the wanton pleasures, the capricious will and the execrable cruelty of one or a very few. This was said by John Adams, the second President of the United States of America. The second president. After one presidential term, he felt that democracy was dying and turning into anarchy. We've had a pretty rich history of democracy in Sri Lanka. We've had universal franchise since 1931. We've been a republic since 1972. We've had an executive presidency since 1978. In which direction are we headed? Anarchy or true democratic governance? At the end of the day, I suppose that is for us to decide, the people of Sri Lanka, because legally, sovereignty lies with the people and it is inalienable. Good night and good luck.